Hello, I'm Brian Roten, senior reporter for Hotel News Now. As the hotel industry readies for another summer, we know that predictions are that this year will be a lot like last year, with U.S. travelers headed overseas on international trips and enjoying cruises now that both of those are options again. However, as the saying goes, this is a street corner business, and so that prediction doesn't necessarily apply to every single hotel here. So, throughout this summer, we'll be speaking with hotel general managers in cities across the U.S. to hear directly from them exactly how summer demand is playing out. For our first guest in this series, we have Kevin Ellis, general manager at the Hyatt Regency Monterey Hotel and Spa in Del Monte Golf Course. Kevin, welcome and thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, Brian, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your hotel? Talk to us about your career, the property, and about the market of Monterey, California.
Yeah, I'd love to. I guess I've worked under the Hyatt flag now for just over 20 years in both the equity managed and now franchise portfolio, and been at this hotel now for 9 years. So, kind of market that you come to in a 2-year plan, and when you go home and tell the wife and kids it's time to go, they tell you we're not leaving. So, I've been very fortunate to enjoy the area. It's a wonderful part of the United States. The property is over 50 years old. It's kind of an iconic hotel built, as you mentioned, on Pebble Beach's Del Monte Golf Course. It's 26 buildings on 22 acres, 560 keys. Traditional Central Coast California feel, access to a lot of the area's great amenities, and a tremendous amount of history to go along with it.
So let's jump into where things are right now. What can you tell us about the current demand mix at your hotel?
Yeah, it's been maybe a slightly different start to 2024, and I say that only because this area, we're very lucky. There's generally no shortages of world-class events that come through Monterey County. So this year is a little bit different mix as far as timing than it has been, let's say, in 2023. So we've enjoyed some months that have been obviously stronger than years past, some months that perhaps have been a little more challenged. But the mix of business seems to be, at least from what we're looking at now, a little more skewed towards transient travel. We're seeing perhaps some hesitation in the tech markets, that group segment, maybe up in the Bay Area, with some of the economic factors out there, maybe being a little more reserved with some of those short-term meetings and kickoffs and things that are perhaps a little more prevalent coming out of the pandemic. So that's been an area of maybe some opportunity for us in 2024. But on the flip side, we've seen stronger than expected drive market traffic. Again, in-state traffic coming in from areas east of Highway 5 continue to be good for us. We've had some new events come into the market, new from a timing perspective, including an IndyCar race that's coming to Laguna Seca in June, which is certainly helping our first half of the year. And BT travel, that's another one that's been business travel has been something that's been maybe slow to return, not only in Monterey but across the U.S. And we continue to see that segment continue to grow, which has been good. What else can I say? International travel, that's a big part of obviously anything on the West Coast. We literally sit right on the doorstep to Highway 1, and that's one of those iconic drives that not only the North Americans but international market flock to cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco to spend some time and then obviously drive down the highway. And so that's been coming back maybe slower than we'd expected. I think we had hoped perhaps in 24 we'd see a larger return to pre-pandemic levels, but that seems like it's going to be a couple more years until we get back into that space.
So as you're looking ahead to when we actually get into the summer months, how is business on the books pacing out so far? Is it where you had hoped it'd be? Is it meeting projections? What can you tell us?
It's somewhat skewed, as I mentioned, Brian, because of the special events. For instance, May, for instance, we've had 3 really strong events at Laguna Seca this May that we didn't have last year. We had one last year, but we've had 2 more. So that's really been very positive, obviously, for transient travel. June is kind of the same, where we've got an IndyCar race coming in, and that's pushed our transient pace up by, for this property, I think we're pacing just about 1,500 room nights ahead of same period last year. And And then conversely, you look at a month like July, where in 2023 we had Women's U.S. Open in town at Pebble Beach, and that obviously was a tremendous compression building event for the whole area. Without that in the market, obviously we're reflecting a bit of a pace decline, but it's where the drive market generally will make up ground, of course, at an ADR deficit and come in a little more short term than maybe what we saw for that event last year. And then just to round out the summer, you're probably familiar with Monterey's Car Week, which is second week of August. That's a signature event. It's probably the most compression causing event that happens in the market. And that's always a bit of a wild card, but early indications right now for Car Week is that we are once again going to beat records with attendance and rates and all of that. So that's always a very dynamic and exciting event that we're looking forward to.
So with the guests who are coming to stay at your hotel this summer, what can you tell us about their wants, their expectations, both from your hotel specifically, but from their overall trip experience? Any new trends that you're noticing, or does it feel like as we talk about normalization in the industry? Are you feeling like guest wants and demands are normalizing as well?
Yeah, great question. I do think there is a bit of a normalization, certainly from the last 3 years. It does feel a little more predictable. But even that said, I think maybe some of the key shifts that we've seen at this hotel from a guest standpoint is, that number one is that leisure piece, that guest that is working and traveling, and what's important to that guest having perhaps a suite style product or access to the outdoor space, and no interruption with Wi-Fi, the ability to obviously enjoy their family and get some work done has been a continued trend for us. The spa, we've got an on-site spa which continues to see an increase in business, and not only just with regards to people seeking maybe more traditional treatments, is this appetite to get into new spaces of spa treatments and overall wellness. Things like hydrofacials have become extraordinarily popular with the spa, and it's something that's kind of been a lot of fun for us to be able to lean into that space and try to find new ways to continue to service that client as they look for new experiences. Wellness, I'm sure you're probably hearing that from a lot of markets, is very, very important to guests traveling, both on the business and leisure side. So food and beverage programming is obviously critical and ever evolving, but we've found now with obviously our relationship with Pebble Beach and access to Monte Golf Course, packaging opportunities have been very strong. And finally, pickleball. Pickleball has been just a wonderful trend for us. We've got 6 tennis courts, which we converted early last year and into about half and half pickleball and tennis. And that pickleball traveler now it's just become a new part. You could carve out a new segment for that individual. They come in from this time of year, perhaps in some warmer markets, Phoenix and Dallas and Las Vegas and Florida, and they come into a climate that's a lot more accustomed to, low to mid 60s through the summer months and play pickleball. And it's a very qualified customer that stays for a long period of time and has money to spend. And it's been kind of a fun addition to a recreation program here.
Yeah, I don't know if we've broken that out as a new demand segment. You've got leisure transient, you've got business, you've got group, and pickleball. So that's yeah, I think that maybe we'll have like a circuit set up where travelers hit up specific hotels and their pickleball courts to enjoy.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I mean, we started the year, we had the top 12 pickleball players in the world that stayed with us for a week for kind of a mini pro-am, so to speak. And this was in early January, when obviously it's tough to attract any sort of new business. And the demand just to come out and have access with these players and spend some time on the courts and learn some new pickleball techniques was frankly overwhelming. So we really feel like this is a strong space, not only for us as a hotel, but as a destination. I think it lends itself well.
It's interesting, yeah. And that leads into my next question then, just looking at, guest demand and what they're looking for. How has that influenced the way that your team sells, your rooms, sells the stay, and figuring out your marketing campaigns for this summer and into the future.
Yeah, I think from a marketing and PR standpoint, as we look perhaps to the summer months, obviously this is a big demand period for the area, even going into the fall. Monterey, as you probably know, September to October, between the wine harvest and some of the warmer weather that tends to come to the area, is very strong for leisure demand and group demand. But we've engaged a couple of different marketing tactics. One of them is really geared around kind of the extended stay traveler, particularly that fly market guest who's going to come in from medium to long haul markets, incenting things like buy three, get the fourth night free over certain periods, trying to get somebody into the building for an extended period of time so they can truly sample everything that the area has to offer. But of course, just kind of take advantage of maybe that incremental spend while they're here. The other real focus has been public relations. I think we have found with perhaps maybe more of that normalization, as we discussed, the ability to tell the full story of the Hyatt Monterey has been it's an exciting journey. It can't be done quickly because I think there's a lot of facets of the building that can be explored, and of course the area itself. So really focusing on qualified PR efforts that can really expand our story into some of these markets that go back to maybe some of those trends we talked about earlier.
In what ways are you, finding either from, work you've done in the past, in looking at what guests are looking for now, ways of really tying your property into the local market? I know you spoke a lot about the special events that you've had in the market, but what are ways that you're able to really tie yourself there?
One of the more, let's call it blunt initiatives for the hotel was we collaborated with a group called Epiphany to design what we refer to as a community commemorative, which is a fairly substantial art installation up in the main building, which is a kind of depicts the pillars of some of the key areas, partnerships, historical reference points within the history of this area. Things like Laguna Seca, Hotel Del Monte, of course, 17 Mile Drive, Pebble Beach, our partnership with Monterey Jazz Festival. So some tremendous stories that we again try to educate our guests and really lean on some of our community partners to help tell that story. And that's something that you can enjoy, and we find guests engage with that pretty often when they're at the hotel. I think from a more high level, we certainly do a lot of partnership with social media influencers and trying to find those individuals that perhaps have followings in those spaces that we feel are a good fit for us. And they can be as dynamic as things like, we've got 2 pet buildings on property. Of our 26 buildings, 2 of them are committed to pets. And of course, those rooms are fitted with laminate flooring and access to a dog run and outside patios and the barking lot, so on, and lots of little things. And of course, we saw just this surge of people who maybe got a pet during the pandemic, and certainly now they won't travel without it. So we found that this is a really great way for us to service that customer. But from an engagement standpoint, we have had no shortages of finding avid influencers who live in that space and love to tell their story through maybe the personality of their pet. And so that's been a real fun way for us to continue to engage. And that's just an example of ways that we're trying to, again, find our guests.
So then, as you look at how the summer seems to be shaping up, and you'd mentioned some of the events that go on into the later summer months or into the fall, how does all this come together to shape the way that you're viewing your property's performance for the full year?
I think it feels like from a financial perspective, it's going to be a very similar year, perhaps to 2023. Perhaps we're seeing a little bit of rate erosion, but perhaps trading that for a couple of points in occupancy. So RevPAR seems to be growing year over there, and it's pretty consistent with what we were seeing early on in the budget process when we were looking at star analysis and CBRE data, and it seems to be pretty consistent with what we're expecting. How we get there is maybe going to be a little different. As I mentioned, the first half of the year perhaps was a little bit different based on some of the event dynamics, and the second half of the year seems to be where we're going to make up some ground. So still think there's a lot that's going to happen, particularly in the fourth quarter. We, to be quite frank, we see a lot of potential in that corporate group space going back into the fourth quarter. There seems to be a lot of interest in getting some new business on the books for that period. But that's kind of what we're working with right now in our crystal ball. It seems to be a pretty normalized year compared to 2023.
Gotcha. Well, I think that'll take care of it here for us. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, again, just appreciate you taking the time, Brian, and always enjoy being able to tell a little more of the story of Monterey as a destination, and encourage your listeners, if they've not been to the area, to come and take a look, because it's a great spot.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us, and thank all of you for listening. Stay with Hotel News Now as we continue the series talking with GMs about how their summer is shaping up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isaac Colazo, Vice President of Analytics at STR.
Hi, and I'm Jan Freitag, National Director for Hospitality Analytics for the CoStar Group. Tune in to our new show, Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast.
It's a podcast on the global hotel industry, its current trends, what we're thinking about, and where the industry's going.
And we like to have fun with the data too. Find us on hotelnewsnow.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe today.
Thanks for listening. This episode was recorded May 24th, 2024, and produced and edited by Brian Roten. Go to hotelnewsnow.com every day for the latest in hotel industry news.